Yeah, so my background is actually in live theater. And I started with that when I was 10, like, just jumping in like children's theater, that my mom made me do because I was just like a really shy kid, and she was like, get out there, make friends. And I was like, okay. But then I really loved it. And so that, it stuck, you try all kinds of things when you're a little kid and just kind of see what, see what sticks, I guess. And that stuck really hard. So I did that all through middle school, high school, just working with live theater. I started on stage, went to school for theater education because I thought I wanted to be a theater teacher. And then I taught high school theater for 3 years. Was like, oh no, oops, not the right fit for me. Loved my kids, loved my students. It just wasn't the right fit for me. But still, like the whole time, like that was what I loved, was like the live aspect of the storytelling. The fact that like every time you're telling this story, it's going to be slightly different because it's with different people, and every night you're getting like different energy from the audience, and sometimes little accidental changes happen on stage that you don't mean to happen. But so that's really what got me started into storytelling, was kind of just like getting hooked on that energy of it, I guess. And then after I quit teaching, I moved into more of a backstage role, which is where I am now. I've been doing wardrobe professionally since 2013. I'm in the wardrobe department, which is like working backstage in the thick of things during the run of the show. So I'm like doing the quick changes. I'm doing like last minute tweaks. Oh no, my hem fell. Oh no, my button fell off. Like things like that. I am sometimes quick rigging, like, oh, my shirt needs to come off really fast. Can you put a bunch of snaps on it? And then laundry at the end of the night. So like maintenance and laundry. So that's more my role in there. But, it's still, I still do feel like a vital part of the storytelling team, because the costumes, if your costumes stink and are falling apart, you're not going to be telling a very good story. I left teaching. I didn't know what I was going to do. I moved back home to Delaware with my parents because that's where they live right now. And I was there for like a year just trying to figure out what else do I know how to do? I like went to school. I went to this very specific program to train to be a theater educator, and it wasn't for me. So I was working at Macy's in Wilmington, Delaware, and got connected to a woman there who helped like hiring decisions for dressers for national tours that came through Wilmington. And we just got to chatting, and she was like, oh, you do theater. Like, have you ever done wardrobe backstage? And I was like, in college, like I did like once or twice, like as part of my education like my credit requirement for the costume design course, and I was like, yeah, I liked that. And so I jumped in, and my first one with them was, I think, Flashdance, the stage production of Flashdance that was on national tour. And then I worked on Shrek, and just kind of had this moment of like, oh, I really like this. I really, really like doing this, and so then I kind of realized, if I want to do this for real, I can't be in Delaware. There's not a ton of work opportunities for live theater in Delaware. So I was like, it needs to be New York or Chicago. And then I started apartment hunting and was like, I can afford Chicago. So I came out this way, and I've been here 10 years now. I'm very happy. So when the pandemic hit in 2020, I was in the middle of a run of An American in Paris at Drury Lane Theater in Oak Brook, which is where I was working for several years. And it just shut down, and it was indefinite, and none of us knew what was happening, like everyone else in the world. None of us knew what was going on. But like, when your work hinges on a large gathering of people, it's kind of like, oh, what's going to happen with this? So I ended up being furloughed for a year and a half. I was furloughed from my job for a year and a half, from March 2020 until like October, November 2021. So that was a lot. And I found myself really reevaluating, like, this has been my whole life. I've been doing this since I was 10. Like what else do I know how to do? What else am I even capable of doing? Like, who am I without this? A little bit of an existential crisis. But I had these ideas for like stories in my head that I felt would be better as like a film or a TV show, and I'd kind of just dismissed for a really long time as just like, I don't know how to do that. Like that's not, I took like one playwriting class in college, like, but that's, I think now I'm not even like second guessing if I did that, but like directing, things like that. I was familiar with storytelling from that kind of live theater angle, but like for film, I was like, the formatting is so specific. I don't know anything about this. Like, and I just pushed it back for so long as being an option. And now I had all this time and was like, let's learn screenwriting. let's fill my days. Let's find something to do. So it was really how I first approached it, was just like, I have this story in my head. I want to get it out. I got the time now. I never gave myself the time before because I was always just throwing myself into my work so much. I read Save the Cat, which I know is not controversial is the wrong word, but I know people have strong opinions about Save the Cat, which again, I think is great as like a base. I still use a Save the Cat beat sheet when I'm starting a new piece. I think it's important to not assume that it will make your script like perfect and like ready to go off the bat, but it's definitely a good, like, again, for hitting the important beats in the story. I think it's really, really important. So, for my brain, at least, that's what works for my brain and my types of stories, I guess. And then what did I start on? Caltex? That was where I first, and what I'm just being introduced to like just the software of it and realizing like, oh, I've been so intimidated by this format the whole time, and there's a program that will just do it for me. Like that was a really cool realization of kind of like kicking myself like, well, why didn't I do this sooner? There's a computer that will do it for me. Yes, that's kind of my kicking off point. I don't know. I guess understanding how to keep things moving, and just because I feel like if you haven't been like, again, telling stories in one way or another for most of your life, like it's easy to get caught up in like the dreamy details and like, and then this little scene that's kind of like, whereas like, I don't know, that is a good question, but I guess just like learning to keep what's important, gloss over what's not, like kind of let the audience fill in the rest. This was my first feature that I ever wrote, and this is like the 1000th draft of it is what won this contest. Like I did not pull this out of my brain and just plop it on the table and it was ready to go, like first draft was really bad because it was my first ever feature, but again, it was a story I really felt was important to tell, and so I stuck with it and I made it good. Apparently. First round of that first feature was sent out to friends who again like didn't have screenwriting backgrounds, but again like are theater people who know story, so that was very helpful just to get even the general feedback from them, even if they couldn't help me with like, oh, this transition is wrong. They could help me with like, this arc doesn't make sense, this is unclear. So that was very helpful. And around that time, I think, is when I joined my writers group, which is just so helpful. And now they are my like first, I call them like my first like round of defense almost, like with the story. Like they're kind of like my like go-to, like, okay, I wrote this, it's garbage, here, help me fix it. And so that was when I was, I think, a couple drafts into Breston Show was when I joined that writers group, which I found through Twitter. It was crazy. I found them just through Twitter. A woman named Jennifer Dunn had started just like this enormous spreadsheet of like, you could like just start a new page on the spreadsheet and just be like, this is my writers group. People sign up if you want to be a part of it. And I found one that was like, they called it like amateur hour, and they were like, we're all beginners. And I was like, that's what I need because I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, that must have been in 2020 still, maybe early 2021. So we've been meeting for like 2 or 3 years still. We still meet every other week, all virtual still because we're all over the country. And actually one of us is in Australia. So we're all over, and scheduling gets very exciting with all those time zones. But that's around when I yeah, so I think they gave me feedback on probably draft 2 or 3 of Breast and Show was kind of when I jumped in with that group. Jen, who made the spreadsheet, has since adapted that into an app, which is called Notes Community. So this is my little unofficial plug for Notes Community, I guess. Yeah, which is just an app that I think you can just download on any app store. Yeah, and it's just a similar kind of setup for finding a writer's group specifically. Just very silly little things that like I just remember my first ever screenplay that I wrote was a pilot. And I went to Reddit for feedback on that because I just didn't know who else to go to, and it was very harsh but needed. And it was just very silly little things like, oh, the way you phrased this, I think you mean montage. And I was like, yes, that is what I meant. Like, thank you. So just like silly things like, again, like you have this excellent software that can like help you figure things out, but it only gets you so far when you just like don't know the words for things that you're trying to convey, So I guess that was the biggest stumbling block, was just like, what do I mean by this? And what's the right word for it? So I am a breast cancer survivor. I was diagnosed with stage 2B breast cancer when I was 30. No family history. Total surprise. Just like, okay, I guess my cells are growing wrong, because they just do that sometimes. And, I am also a former burlesque dancer. So it was complicated because I had worked in this environment so long that was so like body positivity, all bodies are good bodies, hooray. And like, I really embraced that. But like, what if your body's trying to kill you actively? Like maybe you don't feel so good about your body when that's happening. So yes, that was my kind of jumping off point for this story. It was actually inspired by a member of a support group that I'm in who is a physical therapist for her job. And she like ran a little like free PT workshop for everyone in the support group. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like I was talking to my husband and I was like, I wish I could do something like that. But what do I know how to do that I could do a workshop on? Burlesque. Oh my God, that's a movie. Oh my God, that's a movie. And I was just like, well, I have to write that now. So it all just came together in my head. Like, people talk about like a lightning bolt of an idea, but it very much was just like, oh, that's. So I didn't come at it so much from like, oh, I had breast cancer and I want to write about it. It was very much like the burlesque aspect of it kind of pulled it together for me for like, this is something interesting that I want to talk about. All of it that's autobiographical is really just like the type of treatment that she goes through. Just the location of the lump, the like type of chemo she does, when she does chemo. That's really pulled because it was so easy to just like map out the timeline. Cause I was like, well, when did I have chemo? Like how long was it before I had surgery? But there was a lot that I changed even as far as her diagnosis. I made her younger because like I was on a podcast a couple like weeks, months. I don't know how long ago it was. I was on a podcast, but we were talking about this a little bit. And I was like, yeah, I made her like a couple years younger than me because I was like, it was bad that I was 30. How can I make it worse? How do I make it worse for this character? She's 26. So just like, how do I up it? So, I made it so that her mother died from breast cancer and just like, how do I make it worse? How do I make it worse for this character? How do I throw even more garbage at her than the garbage that I got? And like that sucks. And you feel like kind of a monster doing that to this imaginary person. Her, she's a producer of this burlesque troupe, an aspiring producer of this burlesque troupe. That's not something I've ever done. Like she joined the support group and, ended up running the burlesque workshop. I never actually did that. I just like had the little idea of like, oh, that'd be a cute thing. So like it's the actual putting together of the group, the putting on of the show is not something that actually happened in my life. This is all just, but her basics of her treatment were pulled from my life. I decided to try to do the contest circuit and just it seemed like a really great opportunity, like just a really cool contest with more substance to it than just like, and then you win the contest and you get to say you won the contest. Like, like there's a little more to pull out of it a little more, to draw from it. Yeah, that was wild. I was I was home, and like I I have found that somebody on some spam level has discovered that like it would be tempting for me to answer Los Angeles area code. So I got this call and was just like, oh, unknown number, not going to answer. And then Felicity texted me and was like, hey, this is Felicity with the ISA. Call me back when you get a chance. And she like left a voicemail too. And I was like, oh, what? So I was actually like on a walk with my dog. So I was like, can I call you back in like 5 minutes? And she was like, yeah, no problem. And yeah, so I was just at home and called her back, and I was just like, oh, what? it took me by surprise. Yeah, we did prep work with Felicity and Jordan, and I think Shayna as well, beforehand. I know I've met with Shayna like during and after the meetings. I think she was also part of the prep. And yeah, just going over like selling yourself, like talking through like your own background as well as like selling your stories, and just like what are the interesting parts to hit? Like, how do we skip over the kind of boring parts, like not of the story, but like of my own personal story, like what's most relevant, what's most interesting to talk about. It was still nerve-wracking, but you can't avoid that, because I am a very introverted person who doesn't like talking about themselves. So this is exciting as well for me. But yeah, it was, I think they prepared me as much as you can. Like I felt very prepared going into the meetings, but again, there's only so much you can do. Like my very first meeting, the woman like got on the call with me, and it was very much just because, Felicity prepared me with like, oh, and then they'll ask you to like, tell me about yourself, and like blah, blah, blah. And then you'll segue into like your little pitches. And I was like, great, awesome, prepared. Get into the first meeting. The woman's just like, so what do you want to talk about? And I was like, I don't know. So I thought I had like questions prepared. So that was another great thing that Felicity helped me with, was just Felicity and Jordan, just like questions to ask and like have things like lined up. So that first meeting kind of went like backwards, because we started with the questions from me and then kind of segued back into my intro. Yeah, we met. There was a little like workshop that we did at first, but that was really my only interaction with her, was just like a very initial little meeting. But after, we like friended each other on Instagram and like had some interactions there. And actually after the Fast Track week wrapped up, she reached out to me and was like, hey, do you want to like hop on a call and like just talk? I was like, yeah, sure. So we had talked for like an hour, I think, just like, because she's in LA, I think, and I'm here in Chicago, so we couldn't like go grab coffee, obviously. But yeah, we just had like a really nice little Zoom call. She's great. Yeah, I mean, I think the craziest thing that I think will stick with me forever is that Damien Chazelle read my script and liked it, and like read the whole thing, apparently, because his one note for me was like the last 2 pages, and I was like, "Ah, you read it! You read the whole thing!" Like I was like really of everybody I met with, I was expecting him to be like, "Oh, I read the first 10 pages. This is what I thought." Blah blah blah. Like I was like, "Oh, he's so busy. Like he's got," but he read the whole thing. It's like, what the hell? So that was wild, and also talking to him, he just very much was emphasizing to me, I don't know if I was giving off a vibe or what, but he was like, just kept saying like, don't worry about being annoying, like bother people, like if and when you're on set for this movie, like be annoying if something's not like living up to your vision for this story. Like, so I was like, I don't know if I'm giving off like a I'm scared of talking to people vibe. But yeah, he just kept saying like, don't be worried about being annoying. I was like, great. Oh God, he was so lovely. I had all these questions for him, but we ended up just chatting for like the whole half hour. And like we got to the end and I was like, what? Because his meeting with Katie was scheduled for right after mine. So I was like, well, I know I have to let you go. And he was like, has it been a half an hour? I was like, yeah. Damien Chazelle liked talking to me? Oh my God. It was wild. It sucks, but you kind of just have to realize that it is part of the gig, like it at a certain point, this, it's not like, I feel like writing a novel is one thing because it's like, this is the final product. What I wrote is the final product. With screenwriting, playwriting, anything like that's dramatic writing that's meant to be performed, it becomes collaborative at some point. And you're going to have to meet with people and talk about your ideas and talk about yourself. And it's hard, but it's part of the gig. You know? So that's, if it is something that you want, like, I don't want my advice to be like, well, suck it up, but kind of, you know, like it's scary and it's hard, and acknowledge that and live with that. But if it's something you really want to do, it's something you have to learn how to do. Felicity and Shayna kind of checked in with me, and you know, there's not a lot of movement with the people that I met with, obviously, because of the strike, and there's not a lot that we can continue to talk about, you know, for now. I'm hoping that, like, once the strike resolves, that I can, like, reach out to some of them and be like, hey, remember me? But as far as with the ISA, it's been really nice. Felicity reached out to me and was just like, what else do you have? What else do you want notes on? What else do you want to work on? I was like, oh, cool. I have this. So I actually sent her my very first ever pilot that I wrote. And again, not the first draft. It was the many, many, many hundreds of drafts. But yeah, I just feel like I've worked on it for so long that I'm like maybe not seeing the full picture of it anymore, because I'm just like so in like the granularness of it, you know? And so I just really was excited to have the opportunity to have someone with as much experience as Felicity and Shayna to just like take a look at it and like see it with fresh eyes and see what they thought. So we just had a big development notes call last week, 2 weeks ago. I don't remember. What is time? Time is meaningless. Yeah, so that was really great.